Hi, everybody. This is Mary Beth with Operation Parent, and we're just opening the doors to let everybody in and just to say welcome. You are attending When Alcohol, COVID, and Teens Intersect. The presenter tonight is Christine Storm with Care and Treatment Centers, and this is a special event for various school districts that we'll acknowledge in a little bit. So we're really excited that you are here tonight with us. We're just going to give it about another minute before everything gets started. So again, if you are looking for When Alcohol, COVID, and Teens Intersect, you're at the right place. And as I mentioned, we will be getting started in just a moment. Again, my name is Mary Beth Uberti, and I'm with Operation Parent. And Christine Storm is our presenter with Care and Treatment Center. All right. Just watching the clock, honestly, making sure we start on time. Okay. All right, we still have some people coming in, so we're going to just give it another moment and let people get into the webinar presentation. All right. Okay, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and get started tonight and welcome everyone to When Alcohol, COVID, and Teens Intersect. My name is Mary Beth Uberti, and I'm with Operation Parent. And tonight we have a presenter, Christine Storm from the Care and Treatment Center, to discuss this topic. It's a great presentation, and I hope we'll have a lot of attendees and a lot of questions. You will have plenty of time for question and answers at the end. As we go ahead and get started, I just want to go over a few things with you. One is Operation Parent. For those of you that don't know who we are a nonprofit that is really dedicated to informing and educating and helping to provide resources to parents, caregivers, anyone raising a preteen and teen. So we are parents at Operation Parent. We are not counselors. We are not psychologists. What we try to do is get you the best information on trends, misconceptions, things that we hope will help you prepare yourself for those preteen, teen years, but also prepare your own children. So that is the mission of Operation Parent. I want to also spend a few moments going over the panel from the go-to webinars, just so you know how to operate a few things that will help as we go through this go-to webinar event tonight. The first thing is on your panel is a little button at the top in an orange little rectangle with an arrow. That is your high control panel. If you click on it, your control panel goes in, and then if you click on it, it pops back out. It just allows you to see your screen more fully. So if you could just open that panel up, there's a few sections I want to point out. Number one section is the questions section. So if you click on the arrow, the questions section will open up. If you needed to get in touch with me or you have a question for the presenter, this is where you're going to go. And I just would have you click in that first gray box, you type it in and you hit send privately, and it will come to us. So any questions for Christine, we will do at the end. If there's questions that you have as we're going through when Christine is presenting, I will be monitoring those and I can help you out. So that is the question section. So for right now, just quickly go ahead and try it out, put your name in there and what school district you're from, and we'll make sure you have that working right. So go ahead and put your name in and what school district you're from. And you're going to put that into the question section. All right, here we go. Thank you. Hold on. All right, so I have Alex from Chatham. I have Joe from New Providence, Jess from Moon Summit, Razmi from Berkeley Heights, Karen from Summit High School, Patricia from Summit. All right, there you go. Everybody's figuring it out. Wonderful. I have Wendy from New Providence, Debbie, New Providence, Lisa from Summit, So this is great. Amy, another Stephanie, Sam from Summit. Perfect. All right, so that's how you use the question section. And this is how you're going to ask questions back to us as we're going through the event. And at the end, you'll have plenty of time to ask questions. Okay, the other feature I want you to click on and look at is the handout section. In the handout section, you will see handouts. Now, about an hour before we launched tonight, I sent you an email. It would have come from marybeth at operationparent.org. And in there were the attachments of these 4 same attachments, these 4 same handouts. If you didn't see the email, don't worry about it. Here they are. You can go ahead and click and download these to your computer while we're doing the event. You can do that anytime during the live event. We are recording this event, so you will receive the recording link tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow, or you may see it tonight. I can't remember how many hours, sorry guys. But you will receive a recording link that you can watch this event again. The only difference is if for those listening to the recording, you can't download the handouts via the recording. It just doesn't work, in which case you need that handout email that I sent you. Again, it's from marybeth at operationparent.org. For those of you that have a .org or a .gov ending in your email address, you may need to go check your filters because a lot of times it gets filtered there. So just from experience. So with that, let's see here. Again, we have a nice group here. This is wonderful. And I do want to go ahead and just let you know that we do have a survey that'll come and launch as soon as this event is over tonight. You'll get the survey. Just take a moment. It won't take too long to answer. If you don't get the survey, you will have the opportunity. That will also be in the follow-up email with the link for the recording. You can go ahead and do the survey there. Again, I just want to say welcome. We had, this is a coordinated event. David Chango was trying to come in and he had some audio issues and he was not able to get into the webinar here tonight to welcome you himself. But please welcome to all the families from New Providence School District, Summit School District, Berkeley Heights School District, Chatham School District, and Milburn School District. We are so thrilled to have you here and welcome you to this event. And I am going now to turn it over to our presenter. Hold on. All the little clicks you have to do to get everything to move the way you want it to. Hold on. And Christine, I'm turning the webinar over to you. All right, it should be at your disposal now. There you go.
Hey, 1 second. Let me get it from this slide. All right, we good? Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. My name is Christine Storm. I'm with Caron Treatment Centers. If you're anything like me, you are working remotely now and staring at a computer screen all day long and joining WebEx meetings and Zoom meetings. So the fact that if that is your life and you are still choosing to do something like this in the evening on your own free time really says so much about your commitment to your children. So I thank you for joining. So Caron Treatment Centers, for those of you who aren't familiar, is an addiction treatment organization that treats teens through older adults who are struggling with substance use disorders and other behavioral health disorders. We've been around since 1957, and we have campuses in Pennsylvania as well as Florida where we treat our patients. And I just recently moved down to Florida, about an hour away from our Boca Raton campus called Renaissance. And I lived in the greater Philadelphia area my entire life. So this is my first fall that I've not experienced in the Northeast, and I am missing it more than I really realized that I would. So a little bit of a change there with all the other changes for 2020. But I actually work in Caron's Student Assistance Program. Sometimes we call it our education department. And the role of our department is prevention and early intervention and support for students, kindergarten through college, who are coming out of treatment. So the bulk of the work that I do as Director of Community Education is really trying to get in front of students, parents, and professionals to talk to them about all the things things that we know research shows can help to reduce the chances that a young person will develop a substance use disorder. So that is really the goal of everything that I do. And obviously, parents, you are the most important influence. So I'm so grateful that you've decided to join here today to listen. I've been with Karen since 2004. And I hope that throughout today, we're going to go through what the objectives are in a second, but it is not my goal to tell you how to raise your children. You know your kid better than you do. It is simply to provide some food for thought, to provide some research that can help to back up what science shows can help to reduce the risk of your kid using. So here's what we're going to try to accomplish tonight. All right, so I need to move some things out of the way so I can see. We're going to review the extent of underage drinking, the dangers it poses, and really the timeliness of this webinar. I did this presentation with a colleague for Operation Parent, and thank you, Mary Beth, for the intro and for inviting me to work with this school district and all of these parents. But we first did this right before summer. And the fear was, you know, kids have had so many different changes and transitions, and now we're moving into the summer months, which is already a high risk time for drinking. So that prompted us to first do this presentation, but so much of it is relevant for all year round. So we're going to talk about that. Man, being slow. I'm going to talk about some common misconceptions about alcohol that really influence parent choices. So in all of my years of doing this and in doing parent presentations, there have been a lot of themes that have come up over the years as to reasons why sometimes parents do allow their children to drink underage. And a lot of that is stuff that is well-intentioned, but it might be a misconception. So we're just going to look into some of those things today. I'm going to acknowledge how difficult it is to parent right now, how to parent for every topic. And then we add drug and alcohol into the mix, and it's become even more challenging than it has in the past. So we'll also look at some advice around what to do with that in the midst of all of the different feelings that we're all feeling right now. And then share some tips. So share some tips for how you can model responsible alcohol use, how you can really educate your child to have a healthy perspective on alcohol as they become adults. And I think that's the goal of all parents, right? If our child chooses to drink as they get older, we want it to be something that they choose, and it's not something that they need, right? So that I think is the goal that all of us have, and it starts with really us educating and modeling. Okay. All right, so why are we doing this webinar? I have this little picture here that highlights the fact that when COVID first started, so if we reminisce back to March, which feels years ago, and it really wasn't all that long ago, when they first announced the shutdown, within that first week, compared with the same time the previous year, we saw a giant increase in alcohol sales nationally. So there was a total panic mode that set in. People they felt like maybe they weren't going to be able to get alcohol, or it was going to be their way of entertaining themselves and dealing with the boredom and the stress as the months went by. So we've seen that has continued. We've seen an increase in alcohol consumption during COVID-19. And we've also been hearing stories of parents relaxing abstinence rules at home. And some of that is really to placate their kids. Kids are bored, kids are stressed, they're not able to see their friends, and also a little bit of a bonding experience with their children. And we heard this with some parents of college kids, right? So the college kid was drinking when they were away at college, and now they're home. And the parents generally would not have allowed that under their roof, but are now kind of relaxing those rules. And might have gotten to the point now where they're wondering, can I put the genie back in the bottle? I've let this be a possibility. Can I take that back? And of course you can. It's just obviously a little bit more challenging. Once you allow something, young people expect that that's the new norm. And we know that some teenagers are looking for ways to blow off steam. And some of the ways that they choose to do that might be unhealthy, things like drinking. And we know that it's really hard to parent around this topic in general on a good day, and we're having challenging days now. So let's just kind of get together and discuss this. So the very first thing I want to do is kind of talk about the scope of underage drinking. There's some really good news, and then there's, you know, stuff that obviously always needs to be worked on. So here's one stat that excessive drinking is responsible for more than 4,300 deaths among underage youth each year. Now, when I first started at Karen in 2004, that number was 5,000 youth. So what that shows us is that some of the policies that have been put into place, some of the things that have been done to keep alcohol out of reach of young people, the better education that we're giving to kids, the stronger the laws are, it is protective. So I think we have this perception that every generation things just get worse. And when it comes to substance use, that's not the reality. When we look at trending from the 70s to now, I can guarantee however old the people are or whatever generation you grew up in, kids were drinking more when you were in high school than they are now. That is just a wonderful thing that I think all of us need to acknowledge and to celebrate, even though 4,300 is still a really sad number. And obviously there are still some things that we need to work on. So young people between the ages of 12 and 20 consume about 11% of all the alcohol in this country. But the scary thing is that when they do choose to drink, they tend to binge drink. So 90% of this alcohol is consumed in the form of binge drinking. And what that is large amounts of alcohol in a short period of time. So for the definition, it would be 5 or more drinks in less than 2 hours for a male and 4 or more drinks in less than 2 hours for a female. And we'll talk about why there's differences in the gender there. But what this is really telling us is that when young people get together, they're not like adults on a Friday night that might get together and sip wine and eat food and talk about their week, right? That's not what this is being used for. For young people, the belief is that the purpose of alcohol is to drink to get drunk. There's not sipping. There's not as much moderating as we would like to see if somebody does make the decision to drink. So while they might drink less often than adults do, underage drinkers consume more drinks per drinking occasion than adult drinkers. And that's what we're really trying to combat. Any amount of alcohol is risky, but binge drinking, large amounts in short periods of time, is what's really risky because you have a higher level of intoxication, more areas of the brain that are impacted, and then all of the dangerous things that we're about to talk about are more likely to occur. So underage drinking dangers. This is a list from the Surgeon General of all the different things that keep us up at night worrying about as parents when it comes to our kids and drinking. I have never met a young person whose grades improved as a result of them drinking underage. They might be able to argue it with abuse of other drugs. I've never seen it with alcohol, right? So we know that alcohol can impact memory. It can impact decision-making and problem solving. It can lead to absences. Hangovers can prevent people from going to school. So all of those different things can impact the academics. And then, of course, you could have social problems. So people getting in fights, people dropping out of activities that were once really important to them in an effort to make room for partying behavior. And that's a big red flag as a parent. If you're raising a kid who was super into track and field or something like that, and as they're getting older, you know, they're dropping out of things like that. And it's not just to hang around the house, it's really to make time for engaging in party behavior. We worry about the legal problems. I always tell this story when I'm working with kids, and it's not to scare them, it's to give a little bit of a reality check that a couple of years ago, I was interviewing a girl for a position. And she's an adult in her late 20s, and this is not a girl with an alcohol use disorder, but she had to let me know that FYI, when you do the background check on me, it's going to come up that when I was 19, I got a DUI. So this is something that I'm in my mind, I'm like, wow, how many times have you had to disclose that to a potential employer? And for certain positions, having that as part of her record could preclude her from being able to get that job. Now, obviously, working in the treatment industry, we are used to hiring people who have some stuff in their past that is going to stick with them for a while. But not everybody is as forgiving and understanding as that. Physical problems. Unwanted, unplanned, and unprotected sexual activity. So when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about sexual assault. We will get to that. But what I'm talking about is sex that is possibly later regretted. So we know with young people, sex and alcohol can become all linked together. When you're young and you're starting to explore intimacy and explore your sexuality, being intimate with another human being for the first time is anxiety producing. It's scary. It can be embarrassing. And we know that alcohol can numb some of those feelings. It can create this kind of liquid courage. And for a lot of our kids, they're under the assumption from a lot of the TV shows and things that they watch that, you know, there shouldn't be feelings attached to that, you know, that should just be something like this hookup culture that they're being exposed to through so much of what's they're inundated with today, makes them feel like they're not supposed to have those feelings. And those feelings are completely normal. And it's actually really wonderful thing to let young people know today that most kids are not having sex. And it's just like with the drinking rates going down over the years, so has sexual activity. I'm seeing the Virginity Rocks t-shirts everywhere I go now. So it's a thing, and we need to let kids know that, first of all, intimacy is scary and embarrassing, and that's okay. And anxiety is sometimes a good thing. It can prevent us from doing something that we will later regret. So listen to ourselves when we have that. Don't feel like you have to numb it. And when I'm talking to kids, I go into classrooms all the time and we discuss the dangers of underage drinking and cannabis use and pills and vaping and pretty much everything. A lot of times as adults, we think they just don't know the dangers. If we just hammer them with the facts and we scare them with all of these facts, that's enough. Well, one thing that's important to know is that they do know this stuff. When I go into classrooms, I'll have kids do a pros and cons list. So talk about all of the pros, like what do people look for when they drink underage? What are some of the cons? They list all of this stuff. They may not know about this growth, the normal growth and sexual development stuff, but they know all of this other stuff. So that's not enough, because we really need to understand as adults that looking for the reward trumps the risk a lot of times in the teenage brain. So looking for that reward, the popularity, the you know, gaining social status with friends, all of those things might mean more to a young person than fearing the risk that could happen. Studies have shown that alcohol can lower levels of growth and sex hormones in adolescent boys and girls during puberty that are critical for sexual maturation. Physical growth, muscle mass, bone density. So that's just that physical side of what can happen with regular underage drinking. Physical and sexual assault. So this is a very real concern. And with the whole, you know, Me Too movement of the last couple of years, this has become a real conversation when I'm doing presentations with young people. They're thinking about this. Girls are afraid of this happening to them. Boys are afraid of being accused. There have been documentaries like Audrey and Daisy on sexual assault and the intersection of that with alcohol. So it's a conversation for sure, and something that we really need to be talking to our kids about. Higher risk for suicide and homicide. So it's a very depressing thing to think about, but the three leading causes of death for young people are accidents, murder, and suicide. It's not heart disease, it's not diabetes, it's all things that are linked with behavior. And underage drinking is often involved. I think they say about 50% of the time in accidents, murder, or suicide, alcohol was involved. Accidents, memory problems, blackouts. We know that somebody under the influence of alcohol is more likely to try another drug for the first time. So maybe somebody that was afraid to vape before or afraid of cannabis is now more likely to try that when they are under the influence and their inhibitions are reduced. And what reduced inhibition means is that something doesn't seem as risky as it usually would. Changes in brain development can have lifelong impact, okay? So the reason we preach so much about delaying the onset of substance use and we talk about respecting the age of 21 is really because of research around brain development and the fact that the brain doesn't actually complete forming until the mid-20s, and that when you put mood and mind-altering substances into a malleable developing brain, you have higher chances of developing addiction, because addiction and substance use disorders, it's a disease of the brain, and that's more likely to happen while the brain is still developing. So The stat is that someone who regularly starts abusing substances before age 15 has just quadrupled their chances of addiction. If you add some of those other risk factors like a family history, mental health disorders, trauma in the background, impulsive personality, those are all things that would, again, increase the risk. So something to be aware of is that this decline that I was talking about is starting to level off a little bit. So you can see some of this data is from, well, all of this data is from Monitoring the Future. And Monitoring the Future is a survey that's been done every year since the 70s with 8th, 10th, and 12th graders from across this country. And it's really like the gold standard of how we track substance use trends. It's considered very reliable. And this is what has come back over the years. So you can see how it's changed from 2010 all the way down to 2019, but there was a slight increase from 2018 to 2019. So it's something we are absolutely keeping an eye on. You can see some of these patterns the same. So how many drank in the last month for each of the different age groups, how many have been drunk, how many engaged in binge drinking, and how many are drinking every day. Another thing that has been surprising over the years is the fact that substance use, alcohol, and other drug use has been typically engaged in more by males, right? So girls have always played a part. Males have always had higher rates of drinking and other substance use. This is another survey, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, that is starting to show for the first time that girls are out drinking boys. They are drinking more often and in higher amounts. And that's really concerning because female bodies have higher risk factors than guys do when it comes to alcohol. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this is something for us to keep an eye on. And there's a lot of hypotheses as to why this is. It could be the fact that these Alco Pop drinks, the hard lemonades, the White Claw, the other things that don't taste like alcohol are much more palatable to young girls. And also just the idea of this female empowerment, which I'm a girl, I'm all about it. But at the same time, it might be female empowerment gone awry. We can do everything a guy can do, but the dangerous things, that's not where we want to be doing everything that a guy can do, right? So this is something to be aware of. And then white students and Hispanic students are drinking higher than other races. All right, so let's kind of go through some of these common misperceptions about parenting and alcohol. So some of the things that you may have thought over the years, you may have heard from other people, and we'll just break it down a little bit. So I need to allow my teen to drink at home to prepare them for college. So there's a few parts to this myth that I often hear. One of those is just this fear that if I'm too strict, right? If I'm too strict and I forbid them to drink in high school, they are going to go wild in college. Another is that I'd rather them make some mistakes with alcohol while they're in high school, while I can still be here and where I can control it a little bit, where, when they go off to college, I can't. And if I take away the mystery, the forbidden fruit of alcohol, and allow them to have the occasional drink with me, they will learn to drink moderately and to not binge. So I hear these all the time, and they are very well intentioned. We all have the same desire for our kids. It's for them to be happy and healthy. So parents think like if I give them a few sips every now and then, it'll be okay. And maybe you grew up that way. So that is the way that you're thinking. So I just want to put a little bit of a lens here about that idea that allowing them to drink in moderation at home is going to translate to the social scene. So it is much easier for a young person to moderate alcohol use when with their family than it is in the social scene. When you're at home with the family, like kids don't want to get drunk with mom and dad for the most part, right? So having a few sips of wine or having a beer every once in a while, like that is easy to moderate. But when that translates to the social scene, it doesn't work because you're not taking into consideration all those other factors. You get to where you are with your friends, and all of your choices can be influenced because you're being encouraged to drink more. You're being invited to play drinking games. You might be drinking to ease social awkwardness. You might be drinking to gain liquid courage to flirt with that guy or that girl that you're interested in. So it's very easy to moderate at home, but that doesn't necessarily translate to the decisions that they make outside of the home when it comes to alcohol, because there are so many social factors that come into play. If they're adults at 18, they should be allowed to drink. So this is another one that I hear often. I've heard it from my own son. You know, I'm 18, I can vote, I could join the army if I wanted to, and I can't have a beer. Like, that's ridiculous. I'm an adult now. I think it would be interesting to just have people throw into the chat. I think that we can use the chat feature, right? What do you think that the drinking age should be? And I like to give 3 choices: 18, 21, or 25. So throw that into the chat and we'll see what kind of answers you guys put out there.
Hold on. Christine, they're coming in on the question feature.
Oh, okay. What are you seeing?
Let's see here. Hold on. I'll pull this out so I can see it a little bit easier. We've got all kinds of answers here. Oh, come on, open up. Here we go. Let's see. I have 25, 21, couple 21s. I'm British and our legal drinking age is 18. 21, 18, lots of 21s, a few 18s showing up here.
Okay, yeah. And I just think it's interesting, right? We all have different ideas and beliefs, and that's, you know, influenced by our culture, maybe the age that we grew up. Some adults on this line may have been allowed to drink when they were 18 because the rules in this country changed in the 80s. And there was a reason for that. There was a reason for the changing of the age to 21. It was really trying to cut down on drinking and driving rates and death from drunk driving. It was around the research about brain development. And once this country did move from 18 to 21, there were some really positive things that we saw. There was a 16% decline in motor vehicle crashes amongst that age range. The rates of drinking dropped down, and there's also possibly some evidence that that later drinking age cut down on the number of people with alcohol use disorders once they became adults. And there are a lot of people that, because the research backs 25 as when your brain really is fully developed, there are some that want to push it to that level. So 21 is kind of the happy medium between the two. But yeah, this is an argument, and what I really try to just stick with is, you know, all of our kids have different risk factors. 18 or 21 or 25, you know, everybody is different. For the most part, 21 is going to be protective in terms of helping them to get to a point where their brain development is in check, where they're making slightly better decisions than you would make at 18. So it's protective in a lot of ways, but I can understand this argument. I can understand an argument for 25, and I can understand an argument for 21. But if we're trying to teach our kids to be responsible, that is the age in this country, and there's a reason for it. And as an adult, I like to just really kind of, as a parent, stick with the science. This is not me being mean. This is science saying this is how you develop. We have learned things over the years that changed it from 18 to 21, and this is the reason why. And it's protective for a lot of different reasons. Okay, they're going to drink anyway. I'd rather them do it under my roof. So here's one thing that I like to encourage is, why are we automatically making that assumption? So I have heard this from a lot of parents, and I've heard this from kids telling me that their parents said to them, okay, you're in high school now. I know you're going to drink. Just don't be dumb about it. That is a really confusing message for a young person to try to translate. Like, okay, so my parent already expects that I'm going to drink. I guess I have permission, even if they say I'd rather you didn't, but I know you're going to. Just be safe about it. It's a confusing message. So why are we assuming that they're going to drink? When we just looked at some of those drinking rates, not everybody is drinking. So it's very protective for us to say, I know that you might feel pressure. You might have a curiosity around it, but my expectation is that you don't. I think that you're amazing enough, that you have a great enough personality, that you are interesting and exciting enough that you don't have to drink in order to be fun to be around. So I set the expectation that I expect that you're not going to. And that creates a more accurate social norm for kids too, because most young people overestimate the number of their peers that are engaging in risky behavior. If I go into a class of 10th graders and I say to them, what percentage of 10th graders in this school drink, they will say to me, 95%, everybody drinks. It's not true. It's a perception. There is zero survey data that backs that up, but it's a perception, and it's a perception that perpetuates because of what we see, right? If I'm a kid and I watch TV shows, it's more entertaining when there's a show about kids that are drinking. So it seems very normalized on TV. It's very normalized on social media. The norm is for a kid to, hang out with friends on a Friday night, go to a movie, this back before COVID, go to a movie, come home by curfew, read a book or watch a YouTube video, go to bed, and no drama happens. But they're not going to talk about that on their Instagram feed, right? Nobody brags about reading a book and getting home on time and going to bed, but they might do that as it relates to drinking at a party, right? So everybody's assuming that everybody else is drinking, and it's just not true. So we don't want to set that expectation. And we know that supplying alcohol to minors increases the risk for continued drinking. There is just survey after survey that talks about providing alcohol under your roof and them drinking more outside of your home, them drinking more later in college. And this is huge. So teens who perceive their parents to be permissive about alcohol are more likely to abuse it. Before I moved down to Florida, I worked with a lot of Pennsylvania area schools, and they do this biannual survey called the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. And it's done every other year with 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. And one of the things that they track is parental attitude. So this is what the teen perceives as their parental attitude. So if the teen says my parent is permissive, either actively or they turn a blind eye to alcohol use, and then they put that right up against that kid's use, those who say their parents are permissive are drinking at a much higher level. It goes together. Those who say that their parents are very against it are drinking less or not at all. Okay, so they do follow your lead. As long as no one drives home, it's safe for my teen and his friends to drink at my house. And this is another one that we hear a lot, the taking of the keys. Everybody can stay at my house, you just can't drive. And I think that when things are happening within our home, we have this false sense of safety, this false sense that we can control the things that are happening under our roof, when that's not necessarily the truth. The things that I hear kids say went on in that basement party while the parents were upstairs, it's very troubling, right? Stuff that's ending up on social media. You run the risk of, two teens that are under the influence getting in a fight and one of them storming off and getting hurt on the way home. With that adult brain, you think of all the different things that could go wrong that they don't think about, but that's our job, is to think about those things and kind of protect them from themselves. You also are opening yourself up to legal ramifications. So most areas of this country have some sort of social host laws and ordinances that say you cannot provide alcohol under your roof to somebody else's child. If you do that, you could be fined or you could be sent to jail. That's how seriously this is taken. And there's also moral and ethical considerations. So I know for me as a parent, I have an 18-year-old son, I did not want him drinking in high school. It was something that his friends' parents knew. But if he had gone to someone's house and that parent made the decision that it's okay for my teen to drink and supplied my teen with alcohol, I'd be so mad. Like, it's a moral ethical thing for me too. You don't have the right to give my child alcohol. You don't have the right to confuse them about messaging related to alcohol. We're trying to follow the law here. And guys, don't be cool, all right? Like, if there's one thing I can get across to you today is don't be cool. It is not your job. It is your job to be the adult in the room and to let your kid be the kid. Were your parents cool? I doubt you considered your parents cool. That's fine. Like, that's not your job. I would not want to be the cool parent. So proudly wear that, right? Proudly be the parent that says, no, as hard as it is and as much of a guilt trip as your kid lays on you, remember, it's your job to keep them safe and to protect them from themselves. And for our gentleman from England on here, this might be interesting if you can see it. So for those of you that are joining by phone, this is probably impossible to see. This information was taken from the 2015 European School Survey Project. So basically what it was doing, it was a very similar survey that was done with European country teenagers and comparing it to the US's Monitoring the Future that we've been talking about. And this is what came back. In the past 30 days, they were looking for rates of binge drinking. And you can see the US, I have this arrow way at the bottom here for what our rates are. And Iceland has some of the lowest substance use rates in the entire world. And they've done some amazing things in order to make that happen. It's a really interesting read. But you can see how this is different for other countries. And I actually, this past year, did an assessment on a boarding school kid from Denmark, where they don't actually have a drinking age. You can't purchase it till a certain age, but you can drink at any age. There's really no law against that. And that's the highest drinking rate. And from his stories of back home, it 100% backs this up. His depiction of the every weekend is a lot of drinking with friends. And this is a young man who's really struggling with social anxiety, who is not learning how to manage his social anxiety because he's always picked up a drink when he's feeling that way. Part of being a teenager is learning coping skills to be able to deal with life. Okay, so the more that somebody starts relying on something outside of themselves, like a substance during the teenage years, they're not going to develop those healthy skills. And then that could continue with them throughout life, where they always kind of need that crutch. Drunk driving is a thing of the past now because of rideshare. So I guarantee you Lyft and Uber would say yes. We have absolutely helped to cut down on the drinking and driving rates. Studies are all over the place. There's nothing consistent. I don't think it's that we've been able to get some really good data as to whether that's true or not. There is some evidence that people who know that they're not going to drive home because they have rideshare are going to drink more, right? So higher rates of binge drinking because now they know I have a ride, right? And I know if I was the parent of a teenage girl, I would be terrified about my teenage daughter getting drunk into a car with an Uber driver. It's just for safety reasons, there are some things to consider there. So times of uncertainty are times of risk. What can we do? There's been a lot of change and a lot of uncertainty, and that's all we hear about now. So I'm not going to get too much into it, but I do want to hammer home the fact that our teens today are hearing very conflicting messages about alcohol. So the messaging from us needs to be clear, and they need to hear it often. Every time they listen to music, they go on social media, they watch a movie, they watch a TV show, alcohol is being thrown in their face, and that messaging can't stand up against a one-time conversation that we have with our kids. So this is a conversation we have early and often, and we want our message and our values and our expectations to be clear. What they're seeing related to alcohol is that it's hysterically funny. Sometimes it can be glamorous. It can be a way to cope and forget about problems, right? What does a person do in a movie or a TV show when they're stressed out? They hit the bar. Or an excuse for bad behavior, right? So, oh, well, yes, I slept with that person, but I was drunk, right? This TV show came out in the spring, Outer Banks, on Netflix, really hugely popular with teenagers. I didn't watch it, but my colleague Kate, who did this presentation with me last time, said her son told her to check it out. It's awesome. She checked it out. Within the first episode, there's sex, drugs, underage drinking, guns, violence, and all of the people are beautiful and pretty, and it takes place on the Outer Banks. So we've got the glamour, we've got the drama, and it's normalizing that for teenagers. And for us to be saying, like, that's not normal, that's scripted, it's important for us to keep that message going. I just wanted to highlight that things obviously are really hard right now. There was this great article that came out at the beginning of this whole COVID thing, and it was called That Discomfort You're Feeling is Grief, right? Grief, and all of those different stages that we go through with grief. Everything has changed this year. It's strange. We've had denial, anger, bargaining. This isn't going to last that long, right? I can handle this for a couple of more weeks. We've had sadness, and then I think we're in this place of acceptance now, or hopefully we're getting to this place of acceptance. But we're all still even having this anticipatory grief about how much longer is this going to last? Are we ever going to be normal again? So there's all of those what ifs, and all of that leads to anxiety. So we're all in the same storm with a different boat, and that boat has to do with our family dynamics, whether we still have a job, how healthy everybody is, what our resources are. But we've all kind of lost something, and so have the young people in our lives. And there's a lot of guilt as parents that I think that we're feeling right now. We feel bad for our kids. We feel bad for the stress level. We are second guessing everything that we do. And I bring this up because this kind of factors in, I think, a little bit to us relaxing things where maybe we shouldn't. Okay, so one of the wonderful things about this whole social distancing thing is that we have been spending more time with our families, and that is the most protective thing against substance use, is strong family relationships and communication. So one of the things that I would just like to really highlight is really be aware of yourself overcompensating because you feel bad for your kids. Overcompensating because you allow them to have extra dessert every once in a while, or stay up a little bit later to watch a TV show, that's one thing. But to overcompensate by letting them do things that are potentially really dangerous and setting a new precedent are really things that we don't want to be doing. And try to get on the same page as parents. When our kids are hearing conflicting messages from the two of us, if dad grew up drinking at the dinner table and wants that to happen with their kids, but mom grew up with alcoholism in the family and doesn't want that, try to get as much as you can on the same page with one another, and don't have those arguments in front of your kids. And I would say try to err on the side of safety, especially if your kid has significant risk factors. Your feelings don't have to drive your decisions. Use your wise mind and not your emotional mind when you're making decisions. When we're all anxious now, we need to pause more often and have conversations and have empathy and compassion for everybody, because we are all doing the best we can, right? And know your hooks. Those things that the kids, those little digs, those things that they know they can do to wear you down. So let's move into the solution here, modeling responsible alcohol use. So the first thing that I want to say about this is, if we want our kids to have a healthy perspective on and a healthy relationship with alcohol as adults, we really need to be showing them, modeling what that looks like. So I wanted to show you guys some CDC guidelines on alcohol, just so you can kind of check yourself a little bit, right? And see if you are modeling things that you should be. So I don't recall, and I'm sure I went to a lovely high school. This probably happened, but it just didn't sink in with me. Alcohol is a drug. It is one of the easiest drugs to overdose on, and it's one that we really need to educate around. I don't even remember learning about what is considered a drink. How does your body process alcohol? and what happens with that. So this is what is considered a standard drink. So 12-ounce bottle of 5% beer. If you're drinking a 10% craft beer, that's 2 drinks that you've just had there, right? 5 ounces of wine. So your wine glass might look like a fishbowl. 5 ounces is a little bit, okay? And 1.5 ounces of 80 proof liquor, which is again, a little amount. So what is considered, that's what's considered a standard drink. The liver can process 1 drink an hour. If you drink 3 drinks in an hour, the alcohol waits in your bloodstream for its chance to be processed. The higher the alcohol level in your bloodstream, the more areas of your brain that are impacted, and the higher the likelihood of binge drinking, blacking out, passing out, injuries, accidents, all those things that scare us. So up to 1 drink a day for women is what's considered okay, and up to 2 drinks a day for men, and that's being looked at as, do we need to lower that a little bit? If you are raising a daughter, things that your daughters need to know is that women have less water and more fat in their body, which means if a girl drinks the same amount as a guy that weighs the same amount as them for the most part, it will be more diluted in the male's body than the female. So she would get intoxicated more quickly. We have less gastric enzymes in our stomach that break down alcohol, so we don't process it in the same way. If a woman and a man drink the same amount over the same period of time, the woman is more likely to have adverse health consequences. That doesn't mean boys can do whatever they want. It's just in that comparison, something that's a little bit different for our girls to be aware of, especially now that the data is showing that they are drinking at a higher level. If you drink, don't drive. We don't want our kids to do it. We need to model that. And this involves communication and planning ahead of time. So let's say you go out to dinner as a family. You know, maybe you guys decide that mom's going to have a glass of wine and dad's going to be the sober person that drives home that night. Okay. So we want to think those things through. If you drink, don't drive, call a taxi, a rideshare service. Obviously, if you have 1 drink and you've been there at dinner for 2 hours and you had food with it, you're okay. But if you had drink after drink, you know, that's something to be aware of. I've had some kids who have come up to me who've said, when I go out to dinner with my friend's parent, they drink a lot and I'm scared to get in the car to go home with them. So be aware that they do pick up on things that maybe you don't think they're picking up on. Wear your seatbelt. If you see an impaired driver on the road, call it in. Another thing that we need to do is be aware that our kids pick up on what we do, not just with their eyes, but also with their ears. Like they are hearing, they are seeing, and they are picking up on things. So these are all the memes that we see on social media all the time. What people put up on social media is oftentimes a defense mechanism against things that they are thinking and feeling. So there is a ton of jokes out there about using alcohol to cope with parenting, right? This lovely one about COVID, I might not have any toilet paper, but I'm ready, you know, all the booze stocked up. So I get the humor in this, but be aware that if we are equating with our kids parenting and stress with alcohol use, we are teaching them something. If the first thing that they see when you had a bad day is that you go for the booze, they are equating those two things together. So try not to joke about or equate alcohol with stress management in front of your kids. And we are coming up on celebration season. I don't know what that's going to look like this year, but I think it's really important that alcohol can certainly be a part of your events. It can be a part of a summer barbecue, Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas celebrations, without it having to be the center focus of that event. This has really been ingrained in me because I have a pretty strong family history of addiction and a lot of people in recovery. So making sure that there are always alcohol-free alternatives available, right? And we want to plan to keep kids occupied so that they don't get themselves in trouble and sneak off with alcohol. And I think it's just so important that we show our kids that you don't have to have alcohol to have a good time, right? So planning family events, planning events with friends where your kids are with you, where they see you being able to do fun, wholesome things without having to have a drink in your hand, right? So that's just really teaching our kids, I could take it or leave it. It's a beverage choice sometimes that I enjoy, but I don't have to have it. right? I can watch a football game without a beer. Let's go on a picnic. Let's go on a hike as a family, right? Let's put a puzzle together. We have to educate about these things. So let's talk about prevention here in our last 10 minutes together. So one of the things to be aware of is that even the greatest of kids and the greatest of parents can find themselves in this situation. I got into this work after losing a sibling to a substance use disorder, and I have the world's greatest parents. They did nothing wrong. And this still happened in our family because that is just the reality. It is really hard. There are signs and symptoms that your child could be developing a problem with drinking. A lot of signs and symptoms of teens and substance use are challenging because the emotional stuff can sometimes just look like a moody teenager. So here are some things that are a little bit more observable that we can listen to. If you have a child, and these are things that I screen for when I'm working with kids, if they have an inability to stick to a plan. So if they say to themselves, when I go to that party, I'm only going to have one drink. If they can't do that, which is a sign of a substance use disorder, once it enters your system, the craving for more kicks in and it supersedes anything logical. So using more than intended, preoccupation, it's occupying a lot of their thoughts, is planning usage, securing it, dreaming about it. Binge use. They don't have to be drinking every day, but every time they do drink, there is not that ability to say, you've had enough, stop. So always taking it to the point of blacking out or passing out is a dangerous thing. Protecting the supply really just means that I've worked with some students over the years that they have a fake ID. They always offer to be the one to pick up the alcohol for the party so that they can make sure that they have a separate stash that nobody knows about that's just theirs, right? Using a loan, that's not normal. It's not normal. And every once in a while, I will work with a student who that's something that they're doing. They're going into the parents' liquor cabinet and stealing alcohol and watering it down. And after their parents go to bed at night, they are drinking quite a bit alone. That's not normal. Substance use, especially alcohol use, at least in the beginning, it's a social thing. So even for a young person, when it goes away from that, it's problematic. Self-medicating, using alcohol so that you don't have to feel feelings you don't want to feel. So kind of numbing yourself. Frequent blackouts where you don't remember large chunks of time because you shut down the memory center. Having a high tolerance. You know, some kids will really brag that, yo, it takes me a 12-pack to get buzzed. Like, that's a sign of a drinking problem. That's nothing to be proud of. And when values and behaviors are not matching. So somebody who says they value honesty, but then they are constantly lying. They say that they value commitment, and then they're not showing up to stuff. So when values and behaviors don't match, that is also a hallmark of a substance use disorder. It is challenging to navigate the behavioral health system. This is a fabulous resource, and it was one of the handouts for this presentation. And it's basically what to do if you're concerned. So it starts with a conversation with your kid, and then generally involves bringing in professionals that can help you navigate the system. And it usually starts with a behavioral health assessment with a provider that can take a look at everything that's going on and put recommendations into place. As a parent, it's important that you don't assume the school is going to do all of the education, right? They play a part for sure, and schools are doing a good job. They have to provide some level of education, but you are your child's biggest educator when it comes to this. So when we're educating, we're going to discuss the legal implications. We're going to talk about how alcohol affects decision making, how even after one drink, your ability to decide what is risky and dangerous changes. When I'm with a class of students, they would always say, I would never drink and drive. But after a drink or so, suddenly that doesn't seem as risky. Suddenly you think you can do anything. So letting them know that alcohol can lead to some dangerous things, and how every drink is not the same. And if they go to a party and there's a jungle juice or a mixed drink, that one red Solo cup, if it's liquor, could have upwards of 4, 5, 6 drinks in that one cup. We want to empower them by normalizing non-drinking, empowering them to understand that they are enough. There's a fantastic motivational speaker, Chris Herron. He was a former NBA player. If you ever have the opportunity to listen to him, he's great. But I got to see him present to high school students before. And his message, very much, he's in recovery and he started using young. It's very much around, you are enough. Why does it have to be that in elementary and middle school, you can have a blast with your friends just being you, and then suddenly in high school, if you don't drink, then you're not okay anymore? Like, where is that coming from? And the kids really lean into that message. Our goal for our kids, if they don't drink, is for them to be confident enough to tell others, no thanks, I don't need a drink, I don't drink, it's not my thing. But it's going to take some of them a little while to get there. So we want to provide them with some language to turn down a drink, right? And let yourself be the bad guy. I can't drink, my mom is nuts. If she finds out, I'll be grounded forever. She won't let me play, you know, she'll kick me off the soccer team. You know, just let yourself be the bad guy. Give them some tools for minimizing peer pressure, and please share your knowledge, right? If you have a family history of addiction, you have to share that. Just like you would share with your daughter if breast cancer runs in the family. They have a right to know that, because that should factor into the decisions that they make. And then, of course, you want to focus on your family values. You want to set clear, concise boundaries and guidelines for your home. And don't just say to your kids, I don't want you drinking because I'm the parent and I say so. Don't pull rank like that. This is your child and you love them, and you want to explain the reasons why. There are so many risks. Here are some of them, and I love you too much to let that happen. The goal with parenting is to be a balanced parent, right? To have the clear, concise boundaries and rules, but also let them know that you're always there to talk to them, right? That middle ground is hard to find, but it's so important. We're going to monitor. We're going to recognize that teens make mistakes and they need to know that they can come and talk to you. The last thing we ever want them to do is get into a car with somebody who's been drinking, or to get behind the wheel themselves, or to get themselves in a dangerous situation simply because they were so afraid of getting in trouble with you that they were trying to hide it, okay? They should never be that afraid. There's a happy medium there. And this is just an idea of something that I think is a great conversation starter, putting an agreement together. And this comes from the Partnership for to End Addiction. And it's really wonderful. It's an agreement that a parent and teen can sign together. And what I love about it is it's not just focused on what the kid's going to do. The parent promises stuff too. It's a great conversation. So we ask the youth to promise that I will not drink, use nicotine, or take other drugs. I will not drive while under the influence. I will be honest, I will talk to you, but then you're also going to say, I'm going to make myself available to you when you need it. I'm going to be a positive role model. I'm going to provide a safe, comfortable, respectful place. I won't judge. I will listen. I will try not to overreact. I will love you for who you are. So I love this. It's a great way of setting up these years to let them know your expectations and also that you're there for them. So that was a lot of talking. I'm going to shut up now, but I wanted to make sure that you all had some resources to take with you if you want to learn a little bit more. And these are some of my favorites. The Partnership to End Addiction. Obviously, Operation Parent has phenomenal resources too. MAD, the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, has a guide for middle school parents and a guide for high school parents that gets really into all of these different things in detail. So thanks.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and take over the screen here. And this is just the chance now for everybody. I have a few slides to go over about Operation Parent and some other things we are offering. And while we're doing that, go into the questions section. Use the question section to post your questions. And when we get through them, when I get through these screens, we'll go ahead and get to the questions. All right, so hold on, let me just get this out of my way. There we go. We have a couple webinars coming up that I wanted to let you all know about. Hold on, I think I went one too far. We did. All right, let's see. We can get back to that one. All right. Well, my computer, I had a problem with this yesterday with the webinar. Something is going on in there. But anyway, we have two webinars coming up. One is on youth suicide with Dr. Hatim Omar. That is going to occur on Monday, November 9th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. With Operation Parent webinars, just so you know, you can register for our webinars and they are free. But what we ask you just to understand is even if you can't attend the live event, the recording will always be sent to you the next day. So we just encourage you, register even if you can't attend the live event, because then the next day you will get the recording. So we have these webinars available for registration on our website at operationparent.org. When you get in there, you want to click on resources and then webinars. And all of our upcoming webinars are listed there. You just go ahead and register. Again, keep in mind, it's okay if you can't attend the live event. The recording will come to you the next day. A couple other things I wanted to just go over with you is we do offer some great materials on helping you just with some of these topics. We have an elementary parent handbook and we have a middle and high school. Middle and high school goes into topics such as social media, drugs, alcohol, mental health issues, dating violence in more depth, trends, misconceptions, warning signs, and where can I go for help. You can order these on our website at operationparent.org. Just go to our shop and you can see all that and order there. If you would like to know more about Operation Parent and find out and follow us, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the question pane here and let's do some questions. Hold on just. Okay, so we've got a few questions here for you. Got a lot of thank yous. Love the information. And somebody was asking, is this the only session that you talk about, or do you also offer sessions on other substances?
So if you're talking to me personally, absolutely. I did one for Operation Parent on today's cannabis. So I would say some of the bigger ones that we are focusing on, like the three biggest drugs of abuse with young people are alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. So those are the three that are most commonly in their world. And then I do a lot about opioid use disorder prevention and safety with medication. So absolutely.
Okay, I had a question this afternoon, and the recommendation I gave the question was, should my teen watch this presentation? For tonight, I just said, I know you're going to be focusing heavily on the parent side. So now that they've seen this, share it with their kids?
Maybe portions of it. I think there could be some good conversation starters. I think the opening portions around some of the dangers of underage drinking, the one about the messaging that they are hearing today, I think that could be an interesting conversation starter. Like in all of the things that you see in music and movies and TV shows and social media, and even with your friends, what messages are you hearing? And then kind of putting that up against what your values are and helping them to see that you see the struggle. It's different from when you were growing up. There's so much more in their face, and that you're here to help them navigate it, but it's not all the truth that they are hearing out there. It's not showing all of the things that could happen. It's just a lot of times glamorizing it. And I like the agreement part. So there's a couple of things in there that I think could be helpful, but there's also a lot of great stuff that's geared just towards kids. If you go to NIDA's website, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, there's presentations and things that are geared right towards high school aged kids.
Yeah, and there's a lot of videos off that site that are really great videos that talk about all the different substances. So yes, that's a great place to go. What is the best time to have these conversations about alcohol? My kids are not yet curious or experimenting.
You definitely want to get ahead of it. So it's never too early to start building some of these skills. I mean, I talk to parents of kindergartners about how you need to be talking about poison prevention and safety with the things that you put into your body, and the fact that some things are safe for adults that are not safe for kids, and helping them to recognize the difference between something that's in the fridge that might be an alcoholic drink versus something else, and this is something I can have, and this is why, and something that you can't have, and this is why. And you can, again, model those things. Once they get to about fifth grade, my niece is in fifth grade now, and her school is really starting this unit, so she's learning about a lot of different things, and that's really kind of getting ahead of it. Fifth grade, there's not a lot of pressure at that point to drink, so that's a good age to start with the more specifics around peer pressure and all of that. But as young as, you know, as when they're younger, like I always say, drug prevention is about a lot more than just talking about the dangers of different drugs. It's boosting the skills that you need to not use as you get older. So working with them on stress management and standing up for themselves. If a friend wants them to play a video game they're not allowed to play, or watch a movie they're not allowed to play, or ride their bikes further than they're allowed to ride them, every time you help them with the language to stand up to that, that translates to those real life situations they'll find themselves in when it comes to substances. So, you know, the specific conversations around alcohol once they get into, you know, later elementary, early middle school, is when that's appropriate. But you can start sooner than that with healthy living choices.
Yeah, and you're right, teaching them some basic coping skills, you know, and it's fine if they see you go take a walk when you're frustrated. Yeah. You know, and then you can, that's a great way to explain why you do that, which I used to do. What's the thinking on how honest a parent should be about what drinking he did when he was a teen? When a teen asks, did you drink in high school? And you did, how should you respond?
There's a great resource, and you can even Google it, because I don't think it's one of the handouts that I gave. It's how to talk to your kids about drugs if you did drugs. And we're considering alcohol as a drug too. And it's from the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids. It's now the Partnership to End Addiction. And it's great because it gives different potential answers to that. But the overall advice is that we don't lie to our kids, but you don't have to go into too much detail, and you really want to turn it around and focus it at the end of that conversation onto them or to anything that was potentially negative or different. So you can say something like, you know, when I was a teenager, I felt pressure like you do, and it was something that me and my friends did, and I'm really lucky that nothing terrible happened, and I can't guarantee that that would be the same outcome for you. And I love you too much, and I'm too scared to allow you to make some of those really stupid choices that I did, and that's why I feel the way that I do now. But you don't have to tell them I got drunk every weekend and it was a great time for a long time. We had some, you know, crazy stories to tell. After, like, don't want to glamorize in any way. You don't have to lie, and you don't have to be ashamed. And if you are, let's say, in recovery, own it. And let them know the reasons why. I think that's really important modeling.
In the same instance, this is just my question, talking about addiction within your own family. When do you start having that discussion, and how honest are you about that? You know, alcoholism, obviously we're talking about that topic here, but, you know, a lot of times people hide that in their family history.
Yeah, and it goes into this whole shame and stigma around all of this. And that's why we try to use the terms substance use disorder now, because we look at this as a chronic condition with signs and symptoms that is very treatable, and it is really a disorder of the brain. And there's mild, moderate, and severe, like there are for so many other conditions. And it has nothing to do with how moral and honest and smart and even how you were raised. It's if your brain is wired in a certain way and you put mind altering substances into it, like many young people do, you have the chance of this happening for you. So I don't think that those conversations need to be hidden at all. I know with my own son, I talked to him from a pretty young age about my brother that passed away, and he passed away because he put drugs in his body, and it's a really dangerous thing to do. And as he got older, we could have more honest discussions. But yeah, I think helping them to understand how, you know, even if you're having a drink at the dinner table, like this is what alcohol is for. I can have a drink every once in a while. Some people like it too much and they can't just have one drink, and then they have to stay away from it all the time. So we just have to feel our kids out. But they're able to have conversations, I think, sooner than a lot of times you think that they are.
Yeah. And they hear things too, and they learn that, you know, they hear stories. So it's not a matter of hiding it. It just isn't one of those things. If your child came home from a party and was sick all night, what advice would you give for the next time they go out with friends?
So if you're assuming they're sick because they drank too much, I'm guessing, you're going to want to talk to them that next day when people are feeling a little bit better and nobody is furiously angry, and you're going to say things that you regret. So that's definitely a conversation the next day about, hey, what happened last night? You know, you came in, you were throwing up. How much did you drink? How often are you doing this? You know, it's unacceptable that you did that. And I understand why you did, but it's not something that I'm okay with you doing in the future. So let's talk about this. Let's come up with a plan. And maybe you have to figure that out. Maybe they're grounded for a while and they don't get to go out with friends for a while, and they have to earn some of that back. Maybe that's when you sit down and do one of those contracts together, and they come up with their own consequences for what happens if they drink again. And if it's so important to them that they have to drink and they can't not do it, maybe that's the time to take them for an assessment. And you've got, that can happen through the school with the student assistance programs, or that can happen on your own.
Okay. How can I help my son with social anxiety and to say no about drinking? He has gotten drunk twice, embarrassed himself at friends' parties.
Okay, so he's already had some consequences with the embarrassing himself, but it does sound like he is probably struggling with either the peer pressure aspect of it, or, like you said, the social anxiety, and that is just so common now. So I think letting them know that it's okay to feel. I was like the world's most shy teenager ever. My face was bright red anytime anyone talked to me. Thankfully, I did not start drinking when I was a teenager, and I forced myself into uncomfortable situations to try to learn and grow from it. He might need to talk to somebody that can help him to develop a little bit of self-esteem, which is what is often going along with social anxieties. One thing that you want to make sure is to certainly get a handle on that. Once kids, when I do my marijuana talk, that is a big coping mechanism for some kids, is that they will start using marijuana to help them with those kinds of things. It's easier to get away with. And doesn't cause the hangovers and all of those kinds of issues. So, it's something to talk to him about, and maybe get him some help with. That might help.
That might help. Okay. My ex-husband spent 27 days at a Karen Institute. He caused chaos during his alcoholism. My children witnessed the awful behavior. They are now of drinking age and will have a drink at a party. They have both had a drinking binge where they threw up. I'm glad they saw the consequences of their drinking, and I have not witnessed any weird behaviors.
You're cutting out on me.
You're aware.
Sorry. I only heard some of what you said. So I don't know if there was a question there. I did hear, the father's been
I'm
treated
sorry,
for
my,
alcohol use.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, your kids having seen that, that is certainly an education. A lot of times they're not going to see their early drinking as the same as their father's progressed alcoholism. They might hate that behavior, but not associate the things that they're doing at a party with how he probably got started along that line. So, you know, if you have a parent with a substance use disorder, your kids are at higher risk. So they need to know that. And I have a feeling that they do. Hopefully they went through a family education program experience, or they've had a program, like we have a free virtual children and teens program that kids can from anywhere can go through if they have a parent who's either using or in recovery. And it's just a way to get some education and support and feel less alone that, hey, I'm not the only person who goes through this in my family. So if somebody can reach out to me if they're interested in learning any more about that, happy to tell them. But yeah, that's a lot of family conversations and healing and stuff that are going to go along with that.
okay. That was the last question. I do wanted to ask, sometimes this one comes up, but what do you do if your child comes home and they are drunk? How do you know they're just drunk and can sleep it off, as opposed to worried that they drunk way too much and has a chance of, if I put them to bed, asphyxiating?
That's a really good question. I don't think I've had that before. So they got themselves home somehow, right? Usually
Somehow,
if they're
yep.
that intoxicated, they're not coming home. And it's important as a parent, if your child is out, that you do remain awake so that you can check on them when they do come in. The tricky thing about alcohol is even after you fall asleep, you can get drunker and drunker and drunker as the alcohol goes from your stomach into your bloodstream, which is how, you know, sometimes alcohol poisoning can happen. So if they are so intoxicated that you're that worried, you definitely want to keep an eye on them. You know, if it's so serious, you might need to take them to the hospital to get their stomach pumped if you're that concerned. Otherwise, you know, like you would tell anybody, if they drank too much, don't let them fall asleep on their back, keep them on their side in case they were to throw up. But I think if you're that concerned, that might be a trip to the emergency room.
Okay. You mentioned be awake when they come home, and that's one of the things we preach at Operation Parent is be awake. Somebody be awake. Yeah. And be consistent on that. And that's probably the hardest thing as they get older, is staying awake to the curfew time. But
yeah, I think I've shared this in the past that I had a
Yeah.
parent that said once, she's raised a couple of teenagers. She goes, I can't stay awake to their curfew, so I go to bed in their bed. So when they come home, they have to wake me up if they want their bed. So
that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that one.
That's pretty clever.
One of the things that I've always, when we talk about this with parents, is let them know you'll be there. Let them know you will want a conversation with them when they walk in the door, and have a conversation. And as they learn that you will be awake, that is an out for them. I can't party with you. My parents are going to be awake. Somebody will be awake in my house. And guess what? They want a conversation. And that became like the standing joke in my home, as my two kids were, you know, going through the late high school ages. You know, they would come in and got to the point where they would just plop down next to me and go, okay, give me a hug. You want to smell my breath? You want to look at my pupils? And it became a joke, but at the same time, they knew that one of us would be awake, and that was the expectation. So parents, don't be afraid to be awake. Set the curfew. Please set the curfew. Trust me, a lot of kids have no curfew. Set the curfew. Just come up with a curfew that you feel comfortable, or your county has. Set it and stay awake with them. So I think that is the last question. I did have something that David wanted us to mention, and to again, thank you to everyone who came tonight from all the various school districts. I really appreciate it. And I know, Christine, you've done a wonderful job. Again, of course, we've had you many times, and I know you'll be back to Operation Parent for future events, but thank you. He did want to let you know to keep an eye out for more programs that will be coming from the other schools over the course of the school year. So there are a variety of classes of these webinars that will be coming, and each of them will have different issues surrounding our kids. So please just keep an eye out for the next one. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you again, Christine. It's been a pleasure to see you, and I appreciate it.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
All righty.